Hey guys, this is Nick. Welcome to another episode of Strange Spotting. Today I have something different in store for you. We're going to take a look at a piece of footage allegedly depicting a dogman. I think I should spend a few words for those of you who are not familiar with this cryptid. Although not as prominent as Bigfoot, this creature is featured far and wide in legends and folklore from many different countries, and there are more and more people coming forward thanks to paranormal-themed podcasts describing terrifying encounters with this creature. The physical details and behavioral patterns emerging from the interviews I have listened to are very consistent. This creature is reported as a tall, bipedal animal resembling a cross between a human and a wolf, not too different from the common portrayal of werewolves in various media, absent the moonlight-induced transformation. Without further ado, let's get started. I really hope you will enjoy this video as much or even more than I did making it. As usual, I'm going to play the full, unedited, and very brief original clip first. The original clip was published on November the 23rd, 2015 by someone who clearly wishes to stay anonymous given the John Doe moniker. The description reads, "The camera died during this filming. This is a raw footage filmed on a Blackmagic camera notorious for battery issues. The person that gave me this footage does not wish to be identified, but has stated that he will interview and comment with his face blurred." Despite the last comment, the author of the clip has never been interviewed, at least to my knowledge. All we know is that it's referred to as a he and his camera brand, Blackmagic. It's important to notice that this is the only video ever published on John Doe's channel, and there is no information available in the About section, no playlists and no featured channels. The other suspicious element is this supposed double anonymity, if we are to believe that the author and the publisher are two separate individuals. The only thing available for the analysis is the clip itself. Although this lack of information is certainly not sufficient ground for labeling this video a hoax, it is undeniably an element undermining its credibility. The first reaction in watching this 12 seconds clip would be to dismiss the author's behavior as essentially transparent and therefore not an aspect to consider in the analysis. That's what I'm concerned with, though. I have a few observations to make. The first one is that the footage is shot at a very close proximity. Unless it has been enlarged and cropped, we can infer that the camera holder is a few feet away from the alleged creature. There's no way to establish if the author is standing or crouched down, given that the ground is never in the frame. The second observation is that we have no way of knowing what happened right before and right after the recording. If we assume for a moment that this is not a hoax, there are two possible scenarios. Either the author noticed some animal in the thicket and recorded it only to run away right after realizing it was not a known species but something bizarre and possibly very dangerous, or they had the bravery to record with a very steady hand something they knew was an anomaly from before hitting the record button and stayed until the battery allegedly died. This is possible, but a bit less plausible for a couple of reasons. I'm aware that providing an explanation which implicitly acknowledges the existence of Dogman is contradictory and not good logic, but all the interviews I've listened to describe encountering a Dogman as something utterly terrifying that leaves serious psychological scars in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder. Even if the author had never heard of Dogman before, it must be truly distressing to see something so culturally and biologically unnatural. Third consideration is that the publisher claims this footage to have been recorded with a Blackmagic camera with notorious battery issues. If that's to be believed, given the absence of metadata regarding the exact model, the most likely candidate is the first issue in the Blackmagic cinema camera product line, released in 2012 in the US market with an initial price of $2,995 US. I have no way of knowing if the author paid full price or bought a second-hand one, but this model was definitely not your typical run-of-the-mill device. It was an expensive professional pocket camera with very good capabilities for the time, and I can't help wondering why the author was recording in that particular time and place with that model instead of a simple cell phone or a cheaper consumer model hand camera. So far, the odds are in favor of a hoax hypothesis instead of a prank or real biological creature. I'm going to spend a few more words on the topic of the camera model. The first Blackmagic cinema camera could record video in different formats, with an HD or 2.5K resolution, and could even record 2.5K lossless raw footage, which was not a common feature for compact cameras at the time. The clip under scrutiny has good video quality, but I'm inclined to think that even in non-optimal lighting conditions, that device could have produced better quality than this. I wonder why someone with a great camera, who allegedly recorded a legendary cryptid and chose to divulge the video, would choose to convert it to something with less details and quality. This discrepancy doesn't make sense in my opinion, and I tend to view it as another element playing against the legitimacy of this clip. In the previous section, I asked you to assume that this is not a hoax. Now I am going to ask you the opposite, therefore that this is, in fact, a hoax. How did the culprit, so to speak, achieve this result? Did they use CGI, animatronics, or a simple suit? Anyone acquainted with the process of computer graphics and visual effects knows that the act of combining real film or digital footage with computer-generated imagery is called compositing. The problem with compositing is that it provides the best results when the virtual object or character or light effect has a clear separation from the surrounding. Even today, it would be hard to pull off a good compositing with a digital subject being put in the middle of branches and leaves like this. This footage looks too natural to be a combination of a real Thicket and a digital Dogman. Therefore, the whole scene should be CGI. But the details of the branches and the leaves look too natural, in my opinion. While examining this clip, I was inclined at first to rule out computer graphics completely, but I can't do that because of one detail that could suggest it. This leaf edges look slightly unnatural to me. I cannot establish if this is due to the limited capabilities of the camera's sensors in perceiving so many different things at so many different levels of depths in combination with a poor quality lens. Therefore, I'll keep the CGI hypothesis in the mix, but assign a low probability to it. I'll focus briefly on the costume and animatronics options now. As you can see from the leaves in the foreground, the footage was shot in daylight. Perhaps not broad daylight, but I think we can agree that this was not shot during the night. The reason why I'm pointing this out is that I find very hard to believe that someone could fall for a prank involving a guy dressed as a werewolf or an animatronic puppet hidden in a bush in daylight. For these reasons, I am going to dismiss the prank hypothesis and consider only the remaining two, with the hoax hypothesis clearly overwhelming the real creature one. The subject is not fully visible, so we must work with what's in the frame to hopefully shed more light on which hypothesis is more plausible. The first thing I want to point out is that we don't actually know if this thing is a Dogman or not, whether real or hoaxed, because the primary characteristic of Dogman, as reported by eyewitnesses, is their bipedalism. There's no way to say if the subject here is standing or not, and neither if it can ambulate on two legs. We'll have to make do with the fact that the facial features seem to be a mixture of human and canine ones, although the last one's quite exaggerated. I'm going to use a stabilized, sharpened, and more saturated version of the footage and move from easier to harder features to detect. First of all, the subject's body frame is visible on both sides. Here is its right side, and here is its left side. The lack of significant environmental references and the subject's body almost fully covered make any attempt at estimating size futile. All I'm going to say is that it appears to have very broad shoulders, but that of course is a subjective perception and doesn't matter for the analysis. What I deem very important here is to extrapolate all the movements that happen in the clip. The first quite easy thing to notice are the ears. Both ears move. This is the subject's right ear making an upward tilt, and this is its left ear making both an upward tilt and a slight rotation. Now look at how the muzzle and mouth close, then open, then close again. Here is the right eyelid blinking, and here's the left eyelid blinking. Here I've increased the lighting dramatically to focus on something that, in my opinion, was the hardest thing to notice. Look at its left shoulder in this portion of the clip. What do you notice? The subject's shoulder is moving due to the rib cage contracting and expanding. In other words, this thing is breathing. Here's the clip with different enhancements for a few last details. It's a bit hard to notice, but the gums are visible here. As for the well-concealed elephant in the room, what makes the guy in a costume explanation less plausible is the unnatural position of the head in relation to the torso. Here's an outline of the subject's body and head frame. And here's an ultra-basic representation of the camera's direction and field of vision and of the spine and its segmentation. At this point, we have some elements that weaken all three types of hoaxes. The CGI is very unlikely. The movements of ears, mouth, eyes, and the unnatural head-neck-body arrangement make the costume hypothesis extremely unlikely. The only plausible explanation would be animatronics, but the fluidity of motion in the facial features and the natural-looking breathing mechanics seem incompatible with it. I suppose such results are achievable today, but they would probably require Hollywood-level practical effects and great financial effort. Before moving on to the conclusions, I think I should spend a few words about motive. So far, the only acceptable explanation is animatronics. Perhaps I have a tendency to over-rationalize things, but I find it very hard to believe that a VFX artist would spend a great amount of money, probably in the 6 to 7 digits ballpark, to create one of the most, if not the most, advanced animatronics puppet in the world, capable of simulating complex and fluid facial movements and breathing mechanics, for a 12 seconds clip published with no information and no context on YouTube, which faded into obscurity without ever taking credit for it. In drawing things to a close, I'd like to go over the observations made along the video in terms of positive and negative elements regarding the legitimacy of this video. We touched upon many different aspects and features, and I think I should do an ulterior breakdown for how a hoax could have been achieved. First of all, the prank hypothesis was discarded for the following reasons. If CGI was used, there's no prank at all. If the hoaxer used a costume or an animatronics puppet, the notion that someone could fall for it in daylight is untenable. As a general hoax versus real creature comparison, we observed that the footage was published by an anonymous individual claiming to do it for another anonymous individual who said would answer to questions in camouflaged interviews but never did. This was the only video ever published on a channel with zero information. The only pieces of info provided were about the camera brand and the fact that the battery died while recording, but the footage quality is not consistent with what the most likely model for that time, the first issue of Blackmagic cinema camera, could generate. As for the CGI hoax hypothesis, the only detail supporting it is some strange-looking borders in the foliage. The detracting aspects are the extremely difficult composition for a mixed CGI effect, and the high level of details and natural look of the plants and of the lighting in the scene, which are inconsistent with computer graphics technical capabilities in 2015. The costume hypothesis odds are greatly damaged by the ears, nozzle and eyes movements, coupled with an unnatural downward tilt of the head and neck versus the spine. The only tenable technical explanation would be extremely advanced animatronics, but the fluid facial movements and realistic breathing, coupled with a great skill and money involved and lack of a clear motive, diminish the odds of this hypothesis as well. On the other hand, we don't have enough elements to assign a great degree of plausibility to the real creature hypothesis, but enough to consider it, in relative terms, the one with the highest odds among the four options. In conclusion, I consider the real Dogman or werewolf footage moderately plausible evidence of the existence of a Cynocephalus biological species. Do you agree with this analysis? Whether you do or not, please let me know in the comments. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, it would really help the channel grow if you could hit the like button and subscribe to Strange Spotting for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.